We all know that person who is really good at connecting people, right? Have you ever known that person? And you can literally say anything to them. You're like, oh my goodness, I have this real craving for the world's best sushi. And they're like, I know this crazy little backstreet restaurant just down XYZ street. And they just know everything. They know everything. They know everyone. And they're just incredibly well connected. Now, I think this is a huge skill because I'm somebody who is so awkward about asking people for things. I know that you guys might be listening being like, well, Jess, you've interviewed all these cool people on your podcast and you've pitched them. And I have. But it has really pushed me out of my comfort zone to do that. And as somebody who classifies themselves as being quite introverted, it's been quite a challenge for me to be like, oh, okay, well, who can I find and how can I pitch them in a way that, doesn't sound like, hey, please come on my podcast, shouting into like a really dark corridor, because that's how it feels. If you've ever pitched anything, you know that sometimes it feels like you're emailing an inbox that doesn't really exist. But there are some people who are just naturally good at this. There are some people who are just natural born connectors. They are great at building relationships and they don't have to work at it. And it is something that I have to work at. And I feel like it's something that I have to work at because for me, building a relationship with somebody takes energy, it takes time, and I want to invest that time and energy in people, but I always want it to be the right people. And that's part of the whole introvert thing. I'm like, I don't really want to build relationships with 300 people because that's going to really drain my time and energy. And so I'd always thought that being one of these super connectors, like total pro relationship builders, was something that was an extroverted skill and that something that, extroverts just naturally did, and that, I would just always have to work that little bit harder at. Until I came across today's guest on the internet, because the internet is the source of all knowledge. And today's guest is a chap called Chris Winfield. He's come on the podcast all the way from New York City, and he runs a business all about connecting you, your talent that you probably are not shouting about, and connecting it with the press, with the media, with influencers. And Chris is hugely well connected. And when we were recording today's episode, I was like, he's such a nice guy. Like, such a nice guy. And you can just see why people warm to him. Okay. So it's a really interesting episode. We talk a little bit about some of the techniques that you can be using to help you get more media mentions, more press. But we also have some really interesting conversations around why you should be talking about the talents that you have. We talk about why Chris likes to work with introverts. Why us? So if you're an introvert, cheer, because we're on the list. And how you can create your own quote unquote unfair advantage in the market. It's a really juicy episode. I had a lot of fun recording it. So enjoy the conversation. And as always, make sure if you've enjoyed it that you hit me and Chris up on social and let us know what your key takeaway was today. Okay, Poddies, I'm excited. It's Friday. That's reason one. And reason two is that I'm finally bringing Chris Winfield onto the podcast. Welcome, Chris.
Hello. Thank you, Jessica. Great to see you. Great to be here.
I'm so excited about this. Now, I pre-recorded an intro like a pro. So the audience have already heard about some of the amazing things that you have done over the last 2 years. But I know that everybody's going to be asking, what is it that on a day-to-day basis actually lights you up about the work that you do? What's like the one big thing that you're like, this is my jam, this is why I do what I do?
So one of our big things that we do is we help people to get visibility, get publicity, but the people that we help are not the people that are necessarily good about saying how good they are. And for me, that's my mission, is helping these people who are really, really good at what they do, really passionate about what they do, get results for people, and getting the word out about them, getting them media, getting them also that feeling. So the thing that lights me up is when I see, sometimes metaphorically, the lights come on for somebody. And what I mean by that is when they really realize how that they deserve to be heard. And we talk about like helping somebody go from FOMO to famous. And it's not FOMO in terms of I'm worried about missing out on something, but it's like that feeling of FOMO when you see somebody that is maybe a competitor, maybe somebody in your niche, whatever it is, and they're that person that's always getting media coverage, they're always getting invited to speak and all the cool events, and you're like, ah, that should be me. I know I'm better than them. I know, or I'm just whatever, however you're feeling, but you know that that should be you, but you're not putting yourself out there. And those are the people that we help. So when they get that first piece of media coverage, when they crush an interview on TV or anything, like that's the stuff that, and I get a text saying, thank you. This is, I get all day long, all these different messages. And that's the stuff that fires me up so much.
I love this. And you guys can't see it because obviously, podcast, but Chris is literally waving his arms around like a super, super excited person in a box.
Yes.
I'm very excited. I love it. I want to pick up on one of the things you said there about this idea of taking up space, because this is something that's really interesting to me. I work with a lot of men and a lot of women who are incredibly talented at what they do, but sometimes, and maybe it's the Brit in us, I don't know. Sometimes we get this feedback that people don't want to take up space. They feel bad. Like if they're shining and they're doing really well, then it means that somebody else is sucking, right? And they don't want to take up that space. Is that something that you hear a lot of in your work?
Yeah, and I think the easiest way to think about it is your mindset overall. So do you have an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset? So if it's a scarcity mindset, then you're going to think that way, because in order for me to shine, in order for me to make money, in order for me to be successful, that means that somebody else can't shine, is not going to make money, and can't be successful. And that's a really limited way to look at the world. It's just not the case. It's not the reality. And what I would ask people who are thinking that way is to upgrade the people that you're surrounding yourself with. And because that's really what it comes down to so many times. The late Jim Rohn, motivational speaker and writer, said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it's a really, really important thing. So if you're around people, or many of us were brought up, that's how I was brought up. I was not brought up in an abundance mentality. I was not brought up in the idea that you can do whatever you want, and that there's, resources, money, everything is unlimited. So that's how I thought for a long, long time, until I realized that that's just not the case. And when I say realized, I make it sound really easy, but I had to go through a lot of pain and a lot of trials and tribulations to get to that point. But then I look at like my daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter who brought up with that belief. She just thinks that she can do anything. And I say that in the best way, meaning that she doesn't, so she's into acting right now. So she told me the other day, not just like, oh, I wish I was on Broadway one day. She's like, oh, I'll be on Broadway. She told me the other day, and not that I hope to be a billionaire. She's like, oh, I'll be a billionaire. And when I'm a billionaire, I'll buy homeless people houses. And she's like, and even if they don't want the house, they can just sell it and keep the money. That type of belief. But that's like a really simple way of just thinking about like the people you surround yourself with. So I think of it the opposite way. So if you're good at what you do you care about the people that you work with? If you get results for the clients and customers and improve their lives, not only is it necessary for you to shine and to talk about and promote yourself, it's your responsibility. And it's really, really, really important for you to make that flip. Once you do, you will never have a problem promoting yourself or anything, because it's not about you. It's about the people that you can help.
I really like that. And I think that's really interesting, especially with what you do around the press and around being interviewed, because I think a lot of people feel like sometimes sharing their story is them bragging, or, oh, I can do these things for you. And they feel like that's salesy or pitchy or sleazy. And actually it's not. If you're telling people how you can help them, how you can best serve them, ultimately you're stopping them buying from somebody who perhaps doesn't have the same skills you do or the same level of integrity you do, right?
Exactly. So I'll just share a quick story around this. I was at a holiday party, and it was all these different influencers, health influencers, and really successful people. And this one woman who was big influencer, very successful doctor, she had brought her husband, and I started talking to him. And he's telling me about what he does. He's a functional medicine doctor, blah, 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 and getting into it. And he starts telling me how much he does for his clients. And I was like, oh my God, Anthony, this is amazing. Are you booked out for like years? And because I live in New York City, that's what happens if you're a really good doctor. It's like impossible. He's like, I'm not even booked out this week. I was like, how could that be? He said, well, I suck at promoting myself. I was like, Anthony, I'm going to change your life today. And again, this is a holiday party, and this is 5 minutes after I got there. The guy doesn't know me, doesn't know anything about it. He's just looking at me like, all right, whatever, buddy. And so I said, Anthony, are you good at what you do? He's like, yeah. I was like, do you care about the people that you work with? I said, yes, so much. I said, do you get them results? He said, always. I said, Anthony, you're selfish. And he's like, well, now he's really looking at me like, I hate you. And I said, because of you, because you don't like spreading your message, you don't like talking about the results that you get, you don't like marketing yourself, you're keeping your gifts, your talents from all these potential people. And right now, somebody is seeing somebody else, another doctor who's not as qualified as you, who isn't as good as you, and who will not get them the results that you can. And that's on you. And then he was like, okay, I'll see you later. And he walked away. And so I'm like, all right, either this guy hates me, or I was able to get through to him, or maybe a little bit of both. He came back up to me at the end of the night, and before he was leaving, and he has his wife with him. And he's like, oh, this is the guy I was telling you about. And I was like, all right, I don't know if he's going to try to punch me or what. And he's like, you changed how I look at this completely, and I'm going to start marketing. And he has since then. And, it's just amazing. But it's you have a responsibility. So I always think about that. And the other thing that really helps, Jessica, is that if you don't think about having to change everyone, if you don't think about having to market to everyone, if you don't think about, so if I go to speak, there could be 1,000 people in the audience. I don't think about trying to get through to 1,000 of those people, because if I do, it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to, make me nervous and all this. So what I think about is 4 simple letters, HOPE, help one person every day. So I think about somebody in that audience that needs the message that I have, because I know that, I've had my life completely changed from, a podcast interview, a book, all these different things, like people that don't even realize it, that saved my life or changed my life. So I always think about that. And once I'm thinking that way, it makes it so much easier.
I really like that. And I think it's the interesting thing for me is that people will often say, but I don't know what people could get from hearing me on an interview, or I don't know what people could get from reading an article that I've written. I'm like, people are looking for the golden nugget. And that's the thing. They don't need you to write like a 30-page article or a 300-page book. They just need that one short golden nugget that hits them at the right time. And I think that's what makes what you do so interesting, because effectively what you're teaching people to do is take their golden nuggets and put them out into places where they're going to be seen by the right people at the right time.
Yep, exactly. And that's it. Again, you think about, I always ask people to get outside of their bubble, because one of the big things that happens to people, especially with coaches and, people in that world, is that they live inside of this bubble, and then they get inside the whole imposter syndrome and who can I help and blah, blah, blah. And it's more about competing with other coaches rather than thinking about the people that you can help. And so then what winds up happening is your marketing and your Facebook, all these different things aren't really about the people you can help. They're about what you think it should be. And that you think also that the stuff that comes easy to you is why would somebody care about that? So for me, I connect people, I help people really connect. I didn't ever think that that's a multi 7-figure business in that. My parents definitely didn't. They would come to my apartment and be like, the hell do you do? But then they would see me on TV or something, and their friends would be like, oh, we saw Chris. And then they'd be like, oh, now you're so successful, blah, blah, blah. But, it's just because they saw it outside of that bubble. It's really, really important.
Parents are funny. My boyfriend tells for about the first, I don't know, 2 years of my business, he used to say to people, just does videos online. And people thought I was working in the adult entertainment industry.
Right, right,
But
right.
it wasn't until
Webcam.
they would like look on YouTube. I'm not sure what this says about our friends, the fact that they went to look on YouTube to see what I was doing, but they were like, oh, right, okay, no, she's actually doing legitimate videos. But
Right.
it's really interesting. You do have to be taken out of the bubble. And I think it's also, it depends on what kind of personality you are to some degree. I think a lot of people believe that especially to develop connections and relationships with people, you have to be an extrovert. And, I'm somebody who classifies as an introvert. I can get up on a stage and I can talk and I can do the thing. But, catch me in the toilet afterwards and I'm like, oh gosh, I just need 1 minute to do my thing and be on my own. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, so the vast majority, so we run an event called Unfair Advantage Live, where we help people to not just get their message and the strategies and everything, but also connect them with the media. So it's here in New York City. So oftentimes, like, if you think about it, you're like, all right, well, that must be all extroverted people. The vast majority of our audience are introverts, and that's by design. So we don't ever work with people that are really good about bragging about themselves naturally. And the reason for that is that it's just not our mission. So there's enough people out there that that aren't really good, that are good at bragging and good at marketing, and I don't want to help them be better. So because there's enough crap online and enough bad, people who like wreck the coaching industry, all these different things. So our focus is on the people that would classify more as an introvert. So my partner and I, Jen, like, people look at us and they're like, you guys are the most extroverted people in the world. You see us on videos or see it. And we're really not, it's the same thing. Like, I need time. I need alone time, like, especially in the morning. Like, if I don't have that morning routine, I'm not able to do this stuff. There's a great graphic that I always show, and it's basically a pie chart, and it's all red. And then you look over at the key, and it says the types of all the successful people that you think have their shit together that all struggle with imposter syndrome. And, it's basically, that's the idea. Like, everyone struggles with it. So with why we focus on people that are more holding back is like, that's getting somebody to use media, getting their voice out there, getting that validation to change their mindset. That's the stuff that really changes it all for me. We always say, like, that you come for the media and you leave with the mindset. And it's really, really important, because there's not something that says like only extroverted people can do X, or only introverted people can do Y. It's not like that at all. And I think if you use that, and if you know that, then it can change everything. And using media, sales, all these different things as personal development, that's the game changer.
And I love it because you have such a wicked name for this. I'm so jealous, by the way, because as soon as I heard it, I was like, damn it. Like, I wish I'd have thought of that. I wish I'd have been the brainiac that came up with it a bit quicker. But you call it the unfair advantage. And that is so relatable to people, because it's you immediately understand exactly what it is. And you can also apply it to so many different things. So I guess, for you, is it your belief that introverts will have the unfair advantage because they can provide really great results at the same time as, delivering great client care, etc., with that power of the press behind them?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the quick story of where that name came from and the whole idea behind this, and why it's so important, again, to step outside of your bubble. I am in this small mastermind group. We call it the Dad Mastermind. We're all fathers. It's myself, a guy named Todd Herman, who has a big book out right now called Alter Ego Effect, bestseller. A guy named Jonathan Fields, who has like a top 100 podcast called Good Life Project. This guy named Ryan Lee, who's created a bunch of 7 and 8+ figure health companies. And February of 2017, I had a business that was focused on productivity and personal development, because that's what I was really into at that time. And they looked at me, and were very honest and upfront with each other. And they looked at me and they said, Chris, why are you not teaching people what you know best? And I was like, screw you guys. What do you mean? And they said, well, anytime that we describe you to somebody, we call you our unfair advantage. I was like, explain what you mean by that. He said, well, any time that we need anything, we want to get media, we want to find the perfect launch partner, we want to find, you need a speaker for one of our events, whatever it is, you're able to take out your phone and in 30 seconds make that happen. So I started thinking about it, and I realized that, for me, I had always built everything around two different things. So personal relationships, which led to referrals, and publicity. Like, that was everything. And the way that I got the publicity was through leveraging and creating personal relationships with the media. So that building it not around like just spamming and everything like that, but building real relationships, making a reporter my best friend, treating them that way. And so I wound up creating this event around that idea of teaching people how to leverage their superpowers, whatever that is. So there's stuff that you do, like, let's think about you for a minute. So beyond, like, in terms of being able to help somebody, you could help somebody by, not just the sales side and, not just online videos and how to leverage that, but having them as a guest on your podcast, introducing them to other people, other podcasters that they could be the guest on, teaching or helping somebody with getting a podcast set up, how to reach out to get, all these different things. And then that's not even getting into all the personal stuff that you could potentially help somebody with, or all the different relationships. So once you start thinking about that, you're like, oh my God, I bring so much to the table. So then let's take it a step further with the media. So there's all these different things that people start to believe about the media and all these different myths. And, one of the most important things to know about the media is, one, they need you as much as you need them. So your story, your expertise, your voice, they need that for their stories, for their content, for their videos, for their TV shows. Really important. Once you understand that it's a win-win, not a zero-sum game, meaning like, oh, they're just helping me. No, not at all. And then also that, there's nobody out of your league. So there's a great quote where it says, the moment you put somebody on a pedestal is the moment they'll look down upon you. The trick is respecting each other equally. And that's a really, really important thing to remember, is that people are people are people are people. Doesn't matter who they are. Once you understand that, it makes getting media, it makes dealing with influence, whoever, so easy. So just like thinking about those. And then, finally, like, it's not about being perfect. This is one of the things that we were talking about before. So there's like this belief that, all right, there's one way that you have to market yourself. There's one way you have to do sales. There's one way you have to get your message out there for the media. Forget that. That's just a lot of noise. It's like one of the things that we always say is your mess is your message. So all the messy parts of your story that you're trying to hide, those are the most interesting parts. You don't want somebody who's perfect. So a great example, this one woman who came to a bunch of my events, and the first event she came to, and I had asked her what she does, and she had a multi-7-figure sales training business. She was a sales coach, and she's talked about that, and she was kind of stuck. She came to the next one, and she was talking about how she was a teacher. And as a teacher, she was a teacher in a rough part of New York City. And she taught her students meditation, and she taught the other teachers meditation, all this type of stuff. That story led to her getting a Forbes feature, because it was interesting. There was something people could relate to. So thinking about all that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I think there's this perception online that, and I know that a lot of people listening to this will think, but I really want to connect with Chris, or I really want to connect with Todd Herman or Denise Duffel Thomas or whoever, but I can't do it because, here's all my shit behind the scenes kind of thing. And the reality is that everybody has their own stuff going on. And I think that sometimes it can be so tempting to look at everybody as being perfect. Everyone's got it all together. It's just me that's struggling, or that's just making a mess of it. But I love that your mess is your message piece. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, from somebody who's had the opportunity to work with and meet many of the most successful, some of the most famous people, some of the richest people in the world, just because of what I do and where I live, the thing that I can tell you is nobody has it all together. Every person struggles with the same things. Now, what I've found from people that are successful and happy is that they're able to just move through it. But realizing that. So I've met one person each day for the last almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in April. And doing this has taught me. So with these people, I just figure out what I can do to help them, and I'm open, honest, and vulnerable with them. So meaning I'm okay with talking about things I failed with, like feeling whatever. And as a result, people are the same way back to me. And I've heard like some of the most famous people tell me things about struggling with feeling like a fraud, feeling like an imposter, all these different things. So it's definitely not just you, meaning you listening.
I love that. One of the final things I want to touch on here is your website. So obviously when you run podcast interviews, you know, you do an obligatory stalk of the people that you are talking to. And one of the things I love about your website is that you have this awesome call to action on your about page. And you say at the end, you're like, right, if you've got this far, if you've read everything about me, if you're excited about going off, getting in the press, like doing your thing, then go and reach out to just one person today. There will always be like one person that you could go and reach out to today and ask for a referral or whatever that looks like. And I think that's really powerful because I think, you know, in this crazy world of automation and being behind a screen, we've forgotten to ask, you know, we've forgotten to reach out to people and to actually connect with them and to ask them for what we want. Sometimes we feel like we're not worth it. Sometimes we feel like we're going to get a no. So what's your biggest tip behind that for people? What can they really take away if they're not perhaps as used to building those relationships as they once were? What should they be doing?
Yeah. So one of the things I have this simple exercise around this to make it really easy. And there's a whole, on my site, there's a worksheet around this, but you don't even need the worksheet if you don't want it. So basically it's the top 20. So think about what your biggest issue is could be in your life or your business, or like, let's say it's a challenge that you want to overcome. So let's just keep it on media for now. Let's say you want to start getting more media. So whether that's TV, whether that's magazines, online, podcast, whatever it is. So the first thing that most people do is like, I don't even know where to start. So I always think about starting with what you already have. So your existing network. So there's this thing that I came up with called Top 20. And what you do is you essentially sit down. You don't have to sit down if you don't want to, but you get what I mean. And think about all the different people in your life. And when I say all the different people in your life, I'm not just talking about like your online world or mastermind or clients or everyone. Think about all the different people you have met, the relationships you have built, everything. And just write down the 20 people that come to mind without censoring it that you believe could potentially help you to get media. So for example, I remember when I was first doing this, I wanted to meet lots of different people that owned like newspapers and magazines. And I was like, all right, how am I going to get them? And one of the people who I got introduced to was the guy who owns the New York Times, Arthur Sulzberger Jr. Now, the way that I got connected to him was not through any of my business contacts, was actually through my father. Now, my father is not a businessman, an entrepreneur, anything like that. He was a school psychologist. He did not ever have his own business, do anything business related. But he was on a board. I mean, he was a volunteer at a nature reserve, what the guy who owned the New York Times is on the board of. So they became friends. So he was able to connect me to him and like that type of thing. So you start thinking about all these different people and you just list them out. And then you create another column next to that. And at the top, just write, what's their level of influence? And you're just going to give them a score of 1 to 10. So how much could they help me to potentially get whatever my goal is, to get media? So 1 to 10. Don't be overly scientific with it. Then in the next column is simply how likely are they to help me? So if it's like, for me, my father, 9 or 10, I would hope. So I'm going to give him that. So this is where it comes down to, like, if there's somebody that maybe you don't know well, or you've let that relationship go, they're going to get a lower score. Then you just add up the scores and you're simply going to contact whoever has the highest score first. So hopefully with that highest score, there's a high likelihood of them wanting to help you. And this is an important thing. What I'd ask for people to think about when it comes to help is think about how good you feel when you help somebody that you care about. It's an amazing feeling. If you want to feel better about yourself, you're having a bad day, be of service to somebody. So flip it around. Again, a mindset flip is think about, if you're not asking people for help, you're being selfish, because you're depriving somebody of being that feeling of being able to help you. So if you think about it that way, and all entrepreneurs are terrible at asking for help. They like to figure something out and then talk about it and in a way of asking for help. So think of it that way and just start there. Now, if it's somebody who has a low score, you're going to have to do some things to build that relationship. Set up a call where you're just talking, reconnect, meet for coffee. In person is so much better. Doing all those types of things, really, really simple.
I really like that. And I love that point you made there at the end, is that if they've got low score, it doesn't mean don't contact them. It means build the relationship first, get it to a point where you feel comfortable that you've put in the work to make them feel good, to actually make them feel like they're a valued member of your world and your friendship group or your audience or whatever, before you ask them to do something for you.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you so much for this. Seriously, this has been amazing. I know that so many people are going to be out there wanting to contact people now, tagging you on social, like, Chris, I just did it. So if they want to get to know more about how they can harness their unfair advantage, where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to get in touch?
They can go to unfairadvantagelive.com, unfairadvantagelive.com, and learn all about the event. And if they are interested and they feel like they'd be a good fit, just hit apply and fill out a couple of quick questions.
I love that. So there you go, guys. If you are ready to harness your power, get behind the press, get featured on the media, and actually make use of all those relationships and networks you already have with Chris's help, make sure you head over to unfairadvantagelive.com. I will see you guys on Monday for another awesome episode.